What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports hall of fame, like Chick-fil-A chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Steve Hockett, the CEO of Great Clips. Since taking on a leadership role in 2008, Steve has driven Great Clips' impressive expansion from 2,700 to 4,400 salons across 190 markets in the US and Canada. Starting his journey on his high school golf team, Steve later attended the University of South Dakota and then earned an MBA from Notre Dame. He is dedicated to leadership in the business, franchise, and Twin Cities communities, serving on the board of directors for the Minnesota Business Partnership and the International Franchise Association. Shout out to IFA's CEO, Matt Holler, who put the two of us together because he knew this interview would be gold. Today, I'm excited to hear how lessons he learned on the golf course have shaped his leadership style.
Act like you've been there so when you arrive, you're never surprised. Presence isn't always how you look, but it's how do you enter a room? How do you look people in the eye? How do you say thank you? Act like you've always been there so when you arrive, you're never surprised. That's presence. Because you're going to get into situations in life that you've never been before. And if you don't know how to handle yourself, you can get swamped again. But if you act like you've been there, you'll probably come out of it okay.
Steve, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be here, Don. I appreciate the invite and looking forward to our conversation.
There is so much to learn from you. You have this great full circle story because in 1988, you actually opened a Great Clips franchise in Minnesota and it failed. A couple decades later, you became CEO of the company. I read in an interview with the International Franchise Association that you let that failure refine you, not define you. Can you tell me about that window after failing and how it made you a better leader?
Yeah, it's a long time ago, Don, 1988. Now we're here in 2024, but it's still fresh. I still live it every day. I wanted to have 50 salons. I mean, I'm on record of that, but I have found a way to live it in a very positive fashion versus dwelling on the negative. I was 27 years old. My wife, Deb, was 26. We had two kids. My daughter was 5 months old when we took over the salon, and my wife was working full-time as a speech pathologist. So needless to say, I kind of walked out on the plank, and over the next few years, that plank got sawed off. I was out of money. I was frankly over-leveraged and undercapitalized as a franchisee. Great Clips probably shouldn't have proved me to become a franchisee, and I probably shouldn't have asked. But after we closed it down on 12/31 of 1990, 60 days later, 90 days later, Deb basically said, okay, buddy, this wasn't very fun. It wasn't fun for you. It wasn't fun for me. But what are you going to do about it? You can't just sit and sulk forever that you lost your dream. That was part of the refinement, just the kick that I needed. And we did fail as franchisees of Great Clips. But I loved the business. I loved the people. I loved the concept. I was working for a major regional bank out of Minneapolis at the time. My job was creative ways of saying no. I was in the commercial banking side. So I wasn't enjoying what I was doing. By the time I had failed, I was there 4 years, and over the next two, so I was there 6.5 years total. I'd been promoted. I mean, I tried to make the best of it, even though I wanted to do something else. Some could say I was fleeing the bank, but since I'd already been in Great Clips, I was actually going toward Great Clips.
Mm.
I liked the people. I liked Ray Barton and Rhoda Olson. Great Clips is probably held to this day by the Barton family out of Minnesota. Ray and Rhoda are brothers and sister. And I really liked the service business. I decided then and there that I wanted to be a part of the future of Great Clips. So I spent the next 20 months, I would meet with people from Great Clips every month. I said, I want to work for it. I want to help Great Clips get past the Steve Hocketts of the world and move on to greatness. I made up job descriptions. I said, here's what you need. They agreed, but they said, Steve, we don't have any positions. We're a young company. I just kept at it. I was tenacious. My friends thought I was frankly nuts. It's like, why do you want to go to work for the place you failed? But Deb believed in me and I believed in myself. And in December of 1993, I got the call of a lifetime. Rhoda Olson, who's now vice chair of the board at Great Clips and who I report to in my role as CEO, called me and said, hey, we've got a job in the marketing department. Would you like to join? Completely changed my story, Don.
It's funny because actually I had read a story that said that they actually were sick of you calling them all the time. You were just so persistent.
Oh, that's true. I mean, I was a pain in their rear end, but it came with passion. And frankly, it came with experience. They knew that I was genuine. I was real at what I wanted to do. They saw what I tried to do as a franchisee. And granted, I failed. I got no problem saying that. But they liked what they saw. I liked what I saw. But I was tenacious. I did not give up. Great Clips didn't fail in my mind or my heart. That was the big difference.
You know, a lot of organizations might bring in someone that's had success in their space almost as a show toy. Look at this. This is what success looks like. And this is what you can do if you come here. I can't imagine anybody else bringing in somebody who they would say, yeah, this guy bombed, but you know what? Listen to him.
Yeah.
How random is it that Great Clips would say, hey, we're going to bring in somebody who failed at what we did? And your leadership model today is trying to keep people who join the franchise from experiencing what you did. What did failure teach you that you teach others?
You got to look in the mirror and understand that if you fail, it's a lot on you. It can be other things, but you got to own it. And then if what you failed at was in your heart, go chase it. Just go figure out a different way to achieve success in what you failed in. Refine versus define. It's a very good description of the process that I went through. I sit here today. I was a failed franchisee, and I may be the only one, if not the only one, who's gone on to become CEO of the same brand. I worked my tail off for a long time. I had to work my way up. So it wasn't like I failed and then I had the opportunity. Is how do I go out and prove myself differently? How do I get back up and jump back into the game? The key element for me is I believe I was unsuccessful, but I still believed. I didn't waver in my belief that Great Clips was going to become something. And I wanted to be a part of that. So redefine yourself. If I couldn't do it as a franchisee, I decided when I looked in the mirror, okay, big part of the reason I failed was me. There are a lot of good things that Great Clips was doing. And I thought I still had a lot to offer. That is what drove me to say, I want to work at Great Clips. I want to build on the good stuff that I saw and the good people and the good business model of franchising. And then how do I take the worst of me, set that aside and move forward?
You know, in the study over the years of high performance, of greatness that we've done, the number one answer that comes up when great ones get into that conversation about what allowed them to be successful is that they didn't make excuses when things didn't go their way. And that's what I guess I'm hearing from you, is that you actually owned your role in the situation. It's easier for most of us to blame the franchise, blame the company, blame the organization. It wasn't me, it was them. Instead, you said, I did this.
I believe that to this day. I also know that there were forces greater than me, but I have to look in the mirror and say, I failed, or Deb and I failed together, and we knew that. And I'm okay saying that. I've always been okay saying that. I've never run and hid from the fact that, hey, I didn't make it as a Great Clips franchisee. I had one, I wanted 50, and I ended up with none. I'm okay with that. And now it's part of the context of my story.
Sure.
It's part of the richness of my background. I'm a lucky one. I was able to forge through, Don, and I made the best of it. But the reality is, and it won't ever change, I did fail as a franchisee.
Well, you owned it. You grew up in rural South Dakota and you call yourself regularly a small town kid.
Yeah.
I do have to tell you, it was kind of fun looking at some of your high school yearbooks.
1979, hair was
Dude,
long.
you were looking smooth.
It was a weird time, man.
But you showcased your competitive nature on the golf team. I saw you were first place in the regionals, you were 10th in the state. One thing about golf that's always stood out to me is you can learn a lot about someone while playing around a golf. How do they conduct themselves? Are they willing to shade the rules a little bit? Are they this? Are they that? There's just so many things you can learn about someone during a round of golf. How did that upbringing, playing golf as a small town kid, shape your leadership style?
The small town rhythm was very fun. It's a town of 12,000 people then. Mitchell was literally in the middle of nowhere. My dad played a lot of golf and I picked up on it. I used to ride my bike about 2 miles out to the golf course. We only had a 9-hole track then, no sand. I didn't know what a bunker was. I didn't see one for years. Frankly, I played on sand greens. Don, have you ever played golf on sand greens?
Oh, no, that sounds miserable.
Well, when you don't have water and you're in the middle of nowhere and you've got even smaller towns where I grew up, some of these golf courses would have sand greens and you'd hit your ball up and they would put some treatment on the green. Frankly, back then probably wasn't as environmentally sensitive as it should have been, but you got to keep the sand from blowing away in the wind. And then you would take a rake from the hole to your ball and you'd rake it smooth and then putt on the sand greens. And there's a lot of your listeners out there that grew up in small town rural areas like me that may say, oh yeah, I've either played them or I've heard about it. But that's my golf.
Yeah.
I loved it. I frankly did everything around golf. I've worked in the golf shop. I've mowed greens. I've watered fairways. I've mowed fairways. I've picked the range. I've set cups.
You've raked the sand.
I've raked the sand. Yes, sir. It's a singular individual game, but it's a social setting. Going up against the equipment, the conditions, the golf course. You can figure out ways to fight through that. You hit good shots and you go, yeah. You hit bad shots and you may grumble and curse a little bit under your breath, but you keep coming back because the good shots bring you back. You can have that failure and then quickly swamp the failure with success. So it makes you appreciate how difficult things can be in anything that you do, and you got to keep coming back. Back in the 70s, South Dakota boys high school golf was in the fall. Sometimes the snow would fall at night. We'd wait for it to melt. We had a snow delay and then we'd go play.
Oh, that hurt.
You know, you learn. As I was deciding to play high school golf, there was one time I went out to the golf course I played at, Mitchell, South Dakota, and I made 3 birdies in the 9 holes and shot 37. I also had a couple bad holes, but I told myself, dude, you can do this. It started on moments like that. When you have one good round on a 9-hole track, you can do this. I used to play football, and that's a fall sport as well. And I had made the change to golf. I said, okay, I may not be the best, but I can do this. I can excel. I can play golf. I can be competitive. I can enjoy it, and I will learn a lot from it. And to this day, I still play a lot of golf. I still have bag on shoulder. I still carry my own clubs. I use caddies about half the time at the club I play with, but I'm going to go till I'm 70 years old with bag on shoulder at least half the time. That's what golf's all about.
Wow. So this idea that you can swamp failure with success, but you got to stay present in the moment. You got to stay present in the hole that you're on.
Yes.
I love that. You know, I love the Great Clips commercials. Beyond your experience as an athlete, how has involvement in sports partnerships enhanced Great Clips brand presence?
Some of it's impacted you being just in media. I read you years ago, print media and all that. But the media landscape has changed
Completely.
and frankly, it continues to change pretty dramatically by the month. Some days in your line of work, you may say, Steve, it changed from an hour ago.
Huh.
And we recognize that as a brand. We're the largest single brand hair care chain in North America.
Wow.
Very proud of that. Love it. We're still not that big. Our franchisees contribute to the ad fund. It's still not that big relative to what it needs to talk to people in all 50 states and 4 provinces. So that's a wide footprint. 7, 8 years ago, we started what we call a system-wide media approach, that we needed to pick opportunities that fit the Great Clips calendar and how we wanted to build our business, which was the first half of the year. We wanted to pick where we had concentrated viewers, playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
We knew we wanted as much as we could live sports because people watched live sports. So we decided live sports was a key element. And then you got to have the scale to do it. So we became an official partner of the NCAA.
For 90 sports.
Yeah, for all 90 sports. And then we became great friends with the National Hockey League, and we became the official hair salon of the NHL.
Hockey hair, baby. Everybody needs hockey hair.
Hockey hair. Mine's a little too businessy for hockey hair, but for a long time, we bought media, bowl games, and the 14 college football playoffs. So it's been a very deliberate strategy.
Yeah, life is about partnerships. Growth is around partnerships. That's really important. Talk to me about curiosity. How do you stay curious and how do you encourage that in others around you?
I'm humble every day because I know where I grew up and I'm grateful to where I am today. When you're a small town kid like me, curiosity kept me alive. I've always read. I love a broadsheet newspaper versus online. I mean, I love the visceral reading. I read voluminously, almost to the point where my wife says, wow, too much. But I like that. That keeps me curious. I grew up reading Sports Illustrated and the essays that would come in the mailbox every week. And I love that, the longer stories. That stoked my curiosity. I can remember National Geographic as a kid. I saw the temples at Angkor Wat in Cambodia. And I said to myself, someday you're going to go see them. It took until I was 61 years old to do that, Don, but I was fortunate enough to get to Angkor Wat. It was everything that I dreamed about, everything that I was curious about as a kid. There was no internet then. So how do you dream about all about the U.S.? Maps. I've driven most places in America. I've been in small towns around America. I love that. I love that connectivity. People can say, here's a place, here's a state, here's a road. And in many cases, I've been on it. I'm kind of an odd dude that way, Don, very peculiar, but I love exploring things of life. To me, that's what curiosity is just exploring. Be humble, stay curious forever. I will never let go of that.
I like it. I want to dig into your 3 Ps because you've used this as a priority throughout the growth of the company.
Yep.
Why are they so important?
The 3 important elements to how do you move ahead: patience, performance, and presence. Patience is you can be good and you can think you should do more, but you got to be patient. You got to let it happen. So keep doing good. Keep doing more. Don't get out ahead of yourself. You probably aren't as good as you think. So keep doing more and be patient. It's okay to be aggressive. Frankly, I've been aggressive.
Oh, yeah.
Once a month with Great Clips for 20 months. That's pretty aggressive. I was impatient. At the same time, I wasn't going to quit until they were going to hire me. I was going to keep going. I was going to figure it out. So you can use patience to your advantage. But if you get really impatient, you don't deliver your best. You've got to just stay at it, have a plan and push the plan and be aggressive, but know when to back off when you need to. Performance is you got to deliver. And sometimes delivering isn't just the numbers. Sometimes delivering isn't just the profitability. Sometimes delivering is the process to get in there. Ultimately, we're all judged by the numbers. I'm okay with that. I still am to this day. But performance is how do you get success at what you're doing? It can be small success. It can be large success, but you got to perform. You got to hit your numbers. In our business, how do you have relationships with franchisees and how do you solve problems? And How do you keep optimism? And all of that, that's part of performance. So it's numbers, but it's a lot of other elements. And then the presence, often overlooked. Presence isn't always what you're dressed in. It isn't always how you look, but it's how do you enter a room? How do you look people in the eye? How do you say thank you? How do you sometimes be aggressive and other times be very in the back, waiting for the moment? This is what I've always told my kids and how I've lived my life. Act like you've always been there. So when you arrive, you're never surprised. That's presence. Because you're going to get into situations in life that you've never been before. And if you don't know how to handle yourself, you can get swamped again. But if you act like you've been there, you'll probably come out of it okay. Act like you've been there. So when you arrive, you're never surprised. If I go into a social setting that I've never been in before, what am I going to do to make it seem like I've done it before?
I love that. Act like you've always been there. So when you arrive, you're never surprised.
Right.
That's pretty awesome. Is there a particular story that you might be able to share with me where you've witnessed one of these principles in action?
I'll tell you. So my first job out of college, I was a consultant for my fraternity. I traveled around the U.S., visited 48 chapters, 24 states, drove 24,000 miles in 10 months. Some people called it the beer drinking tour of America. There's a lot more to it than that, but I'm all over the place. I went to University of South Dakota. I hadn't gone out much into the world yet. On a hot, steamy August day, I'm in Purdue University, West Lafayette, Louisiana. It's my second official visit. It's a Saturday morning. It's already by 11 a.m. about 105 degrees. You can imagine the flat cornfields around West Lafayette. And it's my last day there. I'm supposed to get all the chapter together, give them a rah-rah, and then go be great fraternity men. Well, it's Saturday, 105, no air conditioning. School has barely started. None of those 100 guys wanted to be in the room, and neither did I. I was over my head. I didn't know what to say. Frankly, I was scared to death. I didn't have presence that day.
Mm.
I realized I couldn't say anything to those men that made any sense or would motivate them. And I was bored myself. Certainly didn't have performance.
Mm.
So I decided then and there, I'm going to change my life. And I have worked on that every day since then. I never want to be in that situation again. I'm always going to be prepared. I'm always going to have a storyline. I'm going to know what presence is, and I'm going to make it happen. And many times a market of franchisees is no different than those 100 guys in that hot, steamy August Saturday morning. You get in front of a bunch of franchisees who, frankly, could be a little scared. Maybe their business isn't going as well, or they disagree with you. And we've got great relations with our franchisees, but it should never be perfect. They should be pushing us. We should be pushing them. I'm okay with that. So you got to be quick on your feet. When you get questions, when you have a scene that happens that you're uncomfortable with, how do you change that? How do you react to the dynamics of the room to still achieve what you want to achieve? Walk in with your plan. It's okay to walk out with an adjusted plan, but you got to walk out with a plan. Take system-wide media. For the first 25 years of Great Clips, the franchises contribute 5% of their sales to an ad fund. We've always had that. It's been a part of Great Clips forever. But when you don't have this big system-wide approach, it's all spent locally. It's in their markets. And the franchisees will be involved in that more directly than at the system-wide level. So as we've been making this change to spend dollars on the system-wide media, you are taking dollars away from the franchisees locally. It's just by definition. That creates tension. Some franchisees, they either don't like the change, they particularly don't like the loss of control. I totally understand. Even though the ad fund, Great Clips Inc. ultimately controls, but we've only ever administered with the involvement of franchisees. So we've been challenging them. We need to go to this system-wide media. It's more efficient. It's more effective. That image building, you can't deliver the image building at a market level like we're capable of doing at a system level. But they challenge back. Right, okay. But how do we also retain some of the local flavor? Because that's where I operate my business.
Mm.
We will figure it out. We will come up with a path. I walked in West Lafayette without a plan. I walked out with nothing. Right now, I walk in every time I go in front of franchisees with a plan, but I always walk out with something now. That was a game-changing morning for me, and it still took 5, 8 years to achieve where I wanted to be.
Wow.
But it should never be perfect. It can't be.
I love it. You came away with this idea of thinking ahead.
Yeah.
Hey, if I'm going to be in this room and somebody asks me a question about, what will I say? If I'm going to be in this room and I get an opportunity to meet this person, how will I engage them? Boy, I love that. What a great concept and what a good takeaway. We can all do that. And
Yeah.
you just don't know what opportunities might actually arrive. But if you've done it in your mind, in some ways, you could argue you've been there. And that allows you to act like you've always been there. So when you arrive, you're never surprised.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty awesome. Help me think through for our listeners how they can use this concept to help them.
In franchising at Great Clips, I will go into a meeting knowing what I want to accomplish. I'll also go into a meeting or a setting understanding that if I need to make adjustments, what ultimately do we want to accomplish? And it's okay to adjust and move if you ultimately get to where you want to go. Sometimes it is just fine to say we agree to disagree and nothing will change.
Hmm.
You have to have the confidence to do any of that. Go in with your plan and get your plan. You have to have confidence to make adjustments and still get close enough that it works for everybody. Sometimes compromise is very good.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't always be stuck on your plan as the only avenue. Otherwise, you don't get ahead.
Mm.
And you have to be comfortable with all three of those. Some days your plan is really good and everybody goes, you know what? I like that. To me, most of life is a compromise.
Mm.
I'm angling down the middle. I know what my guardrails are and I'm going to stay in the guardrails. Success can happen, even if you don't get everything you initially want.
Mm. I love that. So I didn't really get the franchise world until I had the opportunity. I was your keynote speaker at the International Franchise Association meeting. What is it about franchising that's so fascinating to entrepreneurs like yourself?
Well, I go back to my study. I'm working at a bank. I got 2 kids and a mortgage. I haven't been married that long. I didn't have time to come up with an idea for a business. That's the beauty of franchising. The idea is already there. You can take an idea and build a business around somebody else's idea by delivering it locally, the community where you live, people in your neighborhood. That's what franchising did for me. And it still does that to people everywhere that get into it. So you don't have to have your own idea, but you have to be willing to compromise how you want to approach things because you have to live within the franchise system. Franchising isn't for everybody. If you have the great idea and you want to go take it and build a business, then you shouldn't get into franchising. Go build your great idea. But if you want to build a business and use somebody else's idea in somebody else's system, franchising is an exceptional pathway to make that happen.
The word you used at the end of that sentence, system, really stood out to me. Most of the really good franchise organizations, and obviously Great Clips would be one, have a system in place that's not foolproof. Obviously, some people fail. We know one.
Right.
Or actually, we know two. I've failed a few times as well. But it should give you a greater opportunity to walk out successful.
Absolutely. You have many other people that are focused on your success. You, franchisor, frankly, your fellow franchisees. And so you're not in it alone, that you can rely on. In our case now, if a new franchisee comes into Great Clips, even if it's in a newer market, they've got the system-wide media, they've got the TV presence. When I was a franchisee in the 80s and frankly in the 90s, that was a dream of any of us. Great Clips had none of that. Everything evolves and grows, but if you stick with it, franchising, it's a beautiful concept.
I love it. Steve, I've enjoyed this conversation so much. I've learned I will be better as a leader as a result. And I thank you today for being a corporate competitor with us.
Absolutely, Don. One last comment. Don't ever stop storytelling. I love storytelling. You're a leader in that, and that makes me happy to know there are storytellers like you out in the world. The key to my grandsons is they learn the power of storytelling.
That was awesome. Before we dive into my favorite takeaways, I want to share some exciting news. We're celebrating 4 years since the creation of our podcast. Episode 200 is coming up soon. I'd like to give a shout out to my amazing teammates who have been with us from the start. A special thanks to our producer, Savannah Gallagher, our editor, Frank Nunez, and our marketing assistant, Brett Rutherford. Thank you for making me sound great and for making these episodes efficient and fun. Okay, let's jump into my favorite lessons from Steve. What a great leader. I can see why Great Clips as an organization continues to flourish and why they continue to grow. There were so many lessons from the conversation that I think will make me better and that I hope will make you better as well. The first, right out the gate, as he talked about the idea that he was a failed franchisee. He was somebody who had a Great Clips location, but could not make it succeed. And instead of making excuses, instead of blaming someone or the organization, he owned the failure. And by owning it, it allowed him to, as he said, refine him, not define him. He got better because he learned what it meant to fail. Really powerful. The second was when he talked about the importance of compromise, which we lack in so many areas of our world today. But for him, life is about compromise, and it's okay to enter into an opportunity with a plan, but leave with that plan adjusted because you're compromising with the person on the other side of the table. What a good lesson there was in all of that to us. And then when he talked about his three P's, patience, performance, and presence. Patience, you can be good and think you should do more, but you have to let it happen. Don't get ahead of yourself. Keep doing more. Performance, it's one thing to be a great and wonderfully patient teammate, but if you're not performing, you're not on the team for long. You have to deliver. It's not just numbers, it's not just profits. It's often the process of building relationships, engaging others optimistically, solving problems. What an important part of success. And then presence, not dress, not looks, well, maybe a good haircut. I'm not sure. But how do you enter a room when you walk in? Does your eye contact with others, does it say, I'm here to be a person of significance? Do you say thank you to people for things that are done? Do you have the capacity to be aggressive when necessary and actually fall to the back of the room when that's called for as well? Act like you've always been there. So when you arrive, you are never surprised. I love that line. That's actually one I went back and I shared with my kids that night. How good is that? And then I love the way he talked about franchising, working with the International Franchise Association. I'm learning about what the idea of entering into a business relationship as a franchisee means. And I love the concept on how he, as the franchisor, and the franchisees, how they make each other better by pushing each other. A relationship like that should never be perfect. What an open mind is that to say it should never be perfect because we're going to be pushing each other. It will always be tough. Franchising is a special opportunity for so many people. And I love to see how he's witnessed both sides of that equation. I'm better as a result of this conversation. I hope you are too. I appreciate you. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating and review on Apple and Spotify. Feedback helps us spread the insights of our guests to a wider audience. It actually increases our ratings. Thank you so much for those who have done so in the past. And catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.